Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. I'm Frank. Today I'm finally going to show you how to paint a Mandalorian helmet, including some errors you might run into, because this is the way. What was that? Don't worry about it. More on that one later. So finally, I know you guys have been waiting for a while, but we're finally gonna be talking about how to paint and finish the Mandalorian helmet. Now, if you're looking for a perfect step-by-step guide, this is the sandpaper I used, watch me use it. This is the paint I used, watch me use it. A all the way to Z. This isn't the video for you. Like everything else on my channel, I want to give you guys the information to empower you to go and do this on your own. We're gonna be going over 6 different Mandalorian helmets, all painted and finished 6 different ways, different primers, different prep, all of that. This way I can kind of arm you guys with all the information that I now have so you can go and get a Mandalorian helmet that you're happy with. And throughout, none of this will I be using anything like Alumiluster or airbrushing, because not everybody has access to that. So I wanted to see, could I get a nice finish using more at-home traditional methods? So we're gonna be going over Graphite Rub, we're gonna be going over spray paints, some cheap spray paints, some more expensive spray paints. So hopefully through this, by the end of it, you guys will be like, oh wow, I wanna do that one, or these are the steps I need to take to get a helmet that you can be kind of proud of. Throughout this video, I'm going to be referencing other projects and things I've finished to show you how other paints and finishes and clear coats actually apply, including things like my suit and just other props that I finished. So we're going to be bouncing all over the place, but I promise this video is going to be packed with information to help you guys out. So let me first off start by saying that all of these helmets have flaws. I skipped some steps, I rushed some things, and I cut some corners because I wanted to give you guys a good explanation on what happens when you make these mistakes, when things are gonna go wrong, because very few of you, if not any of you, are gonna get it perfect your first shot. I didn't. I still haven't put out a Mandalorian helmet that's absolutely perfect. But as you can see, some of them on camera look just fine. And when you take pictures of them, you can be pretty happy with them. And we're also gonna be going over this little gem over here, which I affectionately have dubbed the Iron Mandalorian helmet because, you know, reasons. All 5 of these helmets were painted and finished with different methods, and these are all the paints I used and or the graphite rubs. We have Rust-Oleums, we have Montana paints, and we have some generic graphite off of Amazon. I even ended up using a pretty wide variety of primers across the helmets, some which I ended up ditching, and others which worked pretty well, like this spray putty. So we're definitely gonna talk about those. The first thing I want to go over and point out on a few of these helmets, or well, I guess all 5 of them, is the flaws. Things that went wrong with them and things that I kind of skipped or didn't put as much time into. So this first helmet here, you can see I lost some of the detail line from over sanding it. Now, I did use a palm sander on most of these. 2 of them I didn't even sand at all, and we'll talk about that later. But you have to be careful when using the power sander or even just sanding in general, or using things like high fill primer or spray putty, because you can lose some of the detail. Now there isn't much detail on these Mandalorian helmets, so you typically don't need to worry about that. But if you're doing something a little bit bigger, just be mindful of that, because I can scribe that back in, I can get that line back there, but I wanted to leave it to show you guys what that looks like. Aside from that, I did have a little bit of a paint issue where some of the paint, I think it's called cat eye or fish eye, I'm not sure the actual term, but you'll get little dots that form all over your paint when you start going on too thick. Now these can be caused from oils or just a multitude of problems, spraying too thick and not properly wiping off the piece while it's primed. It can be a dust speck, it can be a lot of things. You can see just a little bit of it sitting here on this helmet, and that's another issue that was done with this one. This one was sanded pretty good. The clear coat did come out very nice on this. There aren't too many layer lines bleeding through. I spent probably the most time sanding that one because that was my favorite color. But if you come over here, this one was only done with spray putty and some light sanding. And as I move it, you can see some of the layer lines even bleeding through the clear coat. Now this is a direct result of not putting in enough prep time to these, rushing. And if you can see layer lines on your primer stage before you go into paint, you're gonna see them on your final stage, especially when you're dealing with metallics and stuff. You can't skip that step. Metallics love to highlight layer lines, especially in the final steps. These 2 helmets right here were done with a graphite rub, and in order to do a graphite rub, little graphite powder up there, some of you might have seen it if you're in the Mandalorian scene at this point, you go over a nice gloss black, and the better the gloss black, the better. obviously. So as you're going through it, you want a nice reflectivity to it. This again is going to be exemplified by your prep and sanding stage, and you can even see me in this. However, when then you go and add the graphite rub, you may lose just a little bit of that reflectivity and clarity, but it still looks pretty good. Now, if we look down here, if I can get the angle just right, you might be able to see as I move the camera up and down, you can even still see some of the layer lines. Now, you can't see them on the black. The gloss black did a very good job at hiding it, but then when I finally added that metallic finish, and again, right there, you can see them pretty good right there. And I mean, you can't even tell that they're there on the black. But again, the metallics can really do a good job at highlighting and bringing them out. Now this final helmet, the graphite rub came out great on this. This one had a very good sanding job done to it, and I was really proud of it. But you can see here that it's all orange peeled. The clear coat failed. When I was applying the clear coat and testing some methods, like up there, the clear coat reacted bad. Now this isn't due to the graphite rub. You can clear coat graphite rub. You can see that there are some spots that didn't peel up, and this definitely was clear coated. This is from oils on my hand. This is from not washing and prepping the part even after the graphite rub. I'm pretty sure you can't wet sand graphite rub. However, clear coating it is possible, but you do need to do some testing. And one paint I wasn't able to test yet is this 2K Max. Now this is a 2-part clear coat. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I was using this enamel, and there's, oh, hi Mom. So there is a reason that I let this happen. And again, I'll talk about that later. This was, I can't say this was intentional, but there's a reason that it happened to me, and I want to explain that why later. Sand and prime, prime and sand and prime, rinse, repeat until you're happy, or just get some spray putty or filler primer and call it a day, and absolutely soak the prints in it. This is, I can't iterate this enough, guys. This is the most important stage. I did get a lot of footage of the primer stage and the sanding and going back and forth, but there's really no point in showing it. It's something you just have to do. Now again, you can go look at that sanding tutorial I have. I do have a whole other tutorial talking about a multitude of primers, how some act differently than others, the filler primer taking away some of the detail. And if you want to talk about something that is a high fill, this new spray putty might be some of my most favorite stuff I've ever used. However, I wouldn't be using it on stuff like Iron Man armors because of all the detail. But this is a direct result of the spray putty. Now this helmet was lightly scuffed with I believe 200 grit sandpaper. I didn't spend time, I didn't hit this with the power sander or palm sander. I doused it with this spray putty. It's like a polyurethane base, so it's not typically like a spray paint. And this is the result after hitting it with one layer of primer after. I'm a big fan of this Motip primer. This stuff is very cheap, and I ended up doing half of these helmets in it before the final paint coat because I wasn't happy with the results of some of the other primer. But you can see this Nova helmet. This thing's almost ready. I have a little bit of touching up to do on the top with some, with probably some wood filler that the spray putty just didn't quite get to. But this thing came out beautiful, and it's gonna hopefully give me results even better than this gold Nova helmet. Now this one was done with my palm sander, and what's nice about these Mandalorian helmets is you can use a power sander on it, especially if you print it without the ears. That DO3D has a new version helmet. It was put out pretty much around the time I made the first video, where the ears can be broken into 2 different parts and the little vent on the back can be broken out and printed separately. So if you've seen the previous video on how to print the Mandalorian helmet, you can now, if you've got the DO3D files, it is all separable, and you can print everything as their own piece, which makes sanding much easier. This helmet right here, the ears were separated, and I believe that helmet there, the ears were separated. So sanding that whole side flat surface is much easier. You can really get into in there with this power sander, or just do it by hand, or again, try to find some high build spray putty and call it a day. But take your time on this step, guys. Practice is just gonna honestly make perfect when it comes to that. Now, even if you have smooth prints, and I'm pretty happy with this, you can even hear the lines. This, from a distance, looks pretty similar to that. There's still a nice little sheen to it. They both look smooth. But if I was to go and just hit this with some metallic, it's gonna look terrible. It's gonna just amplify those lines so bad. So take your time with the spray, the priming stages. It's gonna pay dividends. If you go and hit your first coat of metallic and your first like base coat, and you start to see some lines, stop, let it dry, sand it back down, and go back, rinse and repeat. But again, this doesn't have to be perfect. If you're still happy with results like this, that's totally fine. I still think these things look great on camera, and you know, I'm my own worst critic, so some of you guys might not even see the imperfections I myself was pointing out. Now these three primers right here, these all honestly operate about the same. I really do love this black sandable primer. It's not as high fill as the filler primer, but it does come out to a nice smooth finish. And if you just put your time into it, you can even wet sand this just a little bit. And it really is beautiful. This is an all-in-one primer, and if you guys saw the visor video, this is what that white Mandalorian helmet was done in, with just a couple coats. And I ended up not keeping the white Mando helmet. I kind of wish I did now, but I can always go back and make another one. This Krylon gray primer operates pretty much the same as this Motip primer. These honestly come out roughly the same, and but this is just a lot cheaper here, so I'm probably going to stick to using this. And again, I really like the results that it's been giving me. And I believe that Mando helmet right there had this as the base primer before I went into the metallic, and it came out pretty good. Again, the typical filler primer, this is the stuff in the 3D printing community that everybody talks about. This is how you get rid of layer lines, dump a bunch of filler primer on it. I still think that's a waste, and even the spray putty was getting pretty expensive. I had to use about half a can just on that Nova helmet. So I still think it is worth taking a power sander to it. You know, the palm sander, or just even hand sanding with 60 grit to 100 grit, that's just gonna save you time, and it's gonna use less material. It's a time versus labor thing, or a cost versus labor. So if you just wanna dump primer on it, that's totally up to you, but you can kind of alleviate that task by sanding it before you prime it, because you should always sand before you prime to get better adhesion. Make sure there's no oils and stuff all over the plastic, and then you can start priming and start that process. But I'm sure all you guys all know that you need to sand these things and prime them. So now let's talk about the part that most of you have been waiting for, is painting them and how to get some nice finishes and shines. Now, right off the bat, I need to remind you guys that you're not gonna have access to all the paints I have access to. You're not gonna have access to some of the paints that other people do. I live in England, I live in the UK, so I'm able to get this really special line of Rust-Oleum automotive enamels at a place called Homebase, and that's actually what I use to paint my entire suit. And so when people ask me for my paint colors and my paint codes and what I use, I'm just getting this paint at the store, guys. And that's the process you guys are gonna need to go through. Now, granted, if you can get access to this, if you have access to this automotive enamel gray titanium and you just wanna paint a Mandalorian helmet really quick, this is my favorite color. There is no base coat here. There is no special metallics. It was primered and then sprayed with this stuff. There wasn't even a gloss black base coat put on this. And as for out of can Beskar color, I'm pretty happy with that. Even compared to this one, if you're just looking at this one on camera by itself without having this one in the frame, it still looks pretty good. But you can see how drastic these two colors are, the difference next to them once they're sprayed. But if you're just looking at the caps, they're really not that different. Obviously this one looks definitely more metallic, and this is a little bit more of a gray. But once you get out there and start testing them, you're gonna get different results. My best advice is to just go to the store, grab a couple metallics and start playing around and testing it. That's really the best option to get the finish that you want. This stuff goes on very nicely. It sprays on thick. I didn't need to use a lot of this. I could probably do about 4 to 5 Mando helmets just with this can, as long as my primer stage was good. This paint is a little different. This is the Montana brand spray paint, and if you're in any type of painting scene or whatever, or you've been doing some type of cosplay, you've probably seen Montana golds, Montana blacks, Montana metallics, and that's exactly what this stuff is. I just recently found out I could get this here in the UK. It is a little bit pricier depending on where you're at, but I wanted to test it out. This stuff sprays on better than any paint I have ever used. However, just to do this one helmet, I used more than half the can. It sprays on very, very thin, and this was over a gloss black base coat. Maybe I could have gotten a silver or some type of metallic base coat and gone over this, but again, that's part of the testing. Now, while it is very, very light, and it did lose some of the sheen after I put the Clearcoat varnish on, it still does look pretty good. This one, I probably put the most time into sanding because I knew I was gonna be using the Montana effects on it, and I wanted it to look the best. However, again, there was a little bit of issues with the paint. I didn't clean the surface properly, and again, I over sanded it, so I lost some of the detail. This was one helmet where the ears were separated. They're just temporarily glued on because I'm probably gonna go back and repaint this to something else. But it is still a nice shine, and again, if you just want a quick Mandalorian helmet, I'm a fan of all of these colors. I really have no issues with any of them. My hardest part of this was finding a good gloss black. I tried a Rust-Oleum gloss black, and it kept kind of orange peeling and yellowing out. I wasn't a fan of it, but this engine enamel 500-degree Rust-Oleum, this was by far the best gloss black I used, and it laid down beautifully. It dried in less than like 2 hours, and I was able to go and do a graphite rub on it. This was another acrylic enamel. It's still a gloss black, but it's not the engine high temp, but you never know what's gonna end up working unless you start testing stuff. So this was the gloss black that was done underneath this, and it turned out pretty good. And this right here is by far my favorite result. This is Graphite Rub. For those of you asking what Graphite Rub I'm using, here it is. I got it off of Amazon. Again, Amazon UK. Credo color, yeah, graphite powder. And I don't think it has any really more information on it. It's for crafts. I have read online a couple places that some people, you know, the type of graphite you use does matter. Some people are getting it a little bit too dark. Some are getting it a little bit too light. People are even saying that the base coat you use can make a real big difference. And I didn't have time to test this. Everyone kept saying use gloss black, so I listened, and the results are pretty good. I didn't do the other half of the helmet because I wanted to show you a quick little example of what it looks like when you start doing the graphite rub. So you want a good gloss black base coat. Again, take your time to get to this stage. The better the gloss black, the better the results will be. I even believe I saw some people clear coating the gloss black to get it even shinier and then doing the graphite rub and going back and forth between that. So it's definitely a really nice effect. And I know people are saying you can't really touch it, but I'm not having really a big trouble with that. It's not really coming off on my hands. Once you buff and rub it in, it's gonna stay in the paint. Now I'm sure if I sat there and really, you know, rubbed on the same spot long enough, it would end up coming off, but if it's for display, this is a really cool effect, and I really, really like it, and I might end up doing some props and swords like this just to kind of test it out. So let me get a little quick setup real fast to show you guys what this looks like when you start actually putting the graphite rub in the gloss black and how you buff it in with a cotton ball. Now, there are a bunch of tutorials all over YouTube for this, graphite rubs and other, you know, Mandalorian videos. And if I'm doing this wrong, feel free to go watch other videos and, you know, test it out. But this is the way I was getting these results. I was opening up the graphite powder, taking a cotton ball, and just kind of dipping it in there, getting a good amount. Now you can put a tray down, whatever precautions you need to make. You are going to stain your fingers, so definitely be careful of that. But as the graphite is you can already see it kind of static clinging to the part. But I went around and dabbed it and then started just rubbing it around. And that's what it looks like when it's done being graphite rubbed. I think it definitely yields the best metallic results out of the bunch. And I did notice that depending on how hard you press, you can see that the light and the reflection's a little bit hazy. And this side was put on with a lot of pressure. This side over here is a lot more clear. Now, it could also be to the fact that I maybe didn't wait as long for the gloss black to dry. Maybe it still was tacky and curing when I did this whole side, because you can see it's just hazy. Still looks all right, but the side I just did definitely came out with much more mirror clarity. So I am much more fond of those results. I mean, you can clearly see me in this reflection, and if I turn over to this side, it's a little bit hazier, but you can still kind of just barely make it out. Regardless, the results are, I think, pretty good. If you just want something metallic that's gonna sit on your shelf, this is kind of it. And it's not coming, like, there's obviously still some on it. I did wipe it off the best I can, but it's not coming off like people say. And a lot of people were complaining about fingerprints, but if you're trying to make something look like metal, I kind of feel like an occasional fingerprint or two really lends to the effect that it is metallic. If this was like a solid, you know, I guess Beskar helmet, it's gonna get dirty, it's gonna get fingerprints. So personally, I feel like that lends to the authenticity of it getting a little tarnished and having a couple little scrapes and scuffs on it. And I think it ends up looking much better. So yeah, that's Graphite Rub. It's pretty cool. So we're painted, we're graphite rubbed, we're sanded, we're primed, we're happy, we're cool, we're killing it. The thing everybody wants to talk about now is clear coat. How do you clear coat metallics? This has been the bane of my existence ever since I started making these Iron Man suits, because obviously Iron Man is a nice metallic red and you want to clear coat it to protect it, but you still want it to look nice. And so I've already kind of gone through some of the trials and tribulations of this, of nailing down paints that can take a clear coat. And your results will vary. This isn't a thing you're just gonna get right off the bat. Now, these two helmets right here were clear coated. Because of the type of automotive enamel Rust-Oleum metallic I was using, it recommends a top coat. It doesn't have the proper chemicals in it that would repel a normal clear coat or top coat. Other metallics I have used do have this warning on them. Right here, I have two Iron Man helmets with two very, very different golds on them. This is the gold I used on my suit, and this is able to take a clear coat. This was clear coated, buffed, polished, waxed. It could look better. I'm happy with it though. This gold is more for decoration. Now this is a Rust-Oleum metallic interior decor gold, and I've used this on a couple things. I've used this on some of my Infinity Stone props over there. I've used it on my Buster Sword. I've used it on the Nova helmet over there to get a nice metallic finish. Now this can't take a clear coat. It says exclusively on the can, top coat not recommended. And if you've ever thrown a clear coat or top coat or varnish over this type of metallic, you probably had it turn a much duller, flatter, browner gold and ruin the finish. Now this applies to really a multitude of these really high gloss, high metallic shine paints. It's very tricky to get a clear coat on them. Even dealing with metallic reds, you can see just how much more of a candy red this is, and this is a much harder effect to achieve when dealing with spray paints. Now, airbrushes typically don't have a problem with this. If you're using really professional type of spray systems, you can clear coat paints like this. But this metallic red that I used on my suit is not, obviously doesn't have the exact same sheen. I wish my suit looked like this. Maybe in the future I'll be able to figure it out and repaint it and upgrade my life, but when you're bouncing around between metallics, you're gonna have to do some testing. One type of metallic brand I really have high hopes for is this Montana brand. They have a specific varnish for their metallics. Now, it did take some of the metallic shine away from it, but I don't think it really robbed it too much of the final result. It looks almost more matte than anything, and I'm pretty happy with those results. I do have a multitude of Montana paints, reds, golds, gunmetals, titaniums, all of that for Iron Man helmets and future suits that I am gonna be testing, so definitely stay tuned for that. We are gonna be doing more painting tutorials and videos, and there's gonna be a lot more information as we progress for that. And I even did get my hands on an airbrush, so I'm gonna be playing around with all clad paints. Now, I didn't use this 2K spray on this helmet. This Graphite Rubbed helmet, I used my normal crystal clear enamel 2K Rust-Oleum that I used on basically my whole suit and a whole multitude of stuff that I've already done. This is to show you what a two-part 2K paint looks like. There's actually a little button in the bottom. You use this little red cap up top to pop in that button, and it catalyzes the paint in there. This paint is only good for about 48 hours once you mix it. It's a 2-part can. It's really great. I haven't used it yet because obviously once you crack it open, you need to use it all within that time period. This is supposed to work very good on metallics. People have good results with this on the Graphite Rub. People have good results with this on other types of metallics. So this, I'm going to test this, and if I can get this to clear coat my candy paints like I hope I can, it's absolutely gonna just change my game, and I'm very excited for it. But this can alone was, I believe, $15 to $20. It's very expensive stuff, so that's also a reason I haven't tested it yet. I wanna make sure I have the helmets to properly test it on. This helmet did not react well. As I stated before, the paint just didn't react well to the clear coat. It could have been just, again, a multitude of things, but again, it was taking it in certain spots. So it definitely probably was oil. It was just not cleaning it properly. I am going to continue to test the Graphite Rub, so just, kind of stay tuned more for that on what the results of this could be. People do accomplish it. Some people have said that you need to do a back and forth between do a little bit of clear coat, do a little bit of Graphite Rub, do a little bit of clear coat, do a little bit of Graphite Rub. So maybe that back and forth pattern can really help build up properly and keep things smooth and keep everything metallic. At the end of the day, the best advice I can give you guys is to take your time, do a lot of testing, and read the cans. Clear coats can really, really ruin a very nice project, and I'd hate to see you guys destroy your helmets just because you just got a little over ambitious and just started dousing it with clear coat. Now, once you have the clear coat applied, if that's the path you choose, how you finish it can really make a big difference. If we look at these two red hood helmets here, you can see the ring light reflection sitting over here, and this light's reflection, it's a little bit hazy. It's not the best reflectivity. It still looks glossy, it still looks shiny, and I mean, it's battle damage, so it's not the end of the world. But if we look over at this helmet, there's this ring light is much more clear and crisp, and the light that's sitting right here is much more defined. This helmet was buffed, polished, and waxed with automotive grade compounds. This stuff. So we have a rubbing compound, we have a polish, and we have a wax. Rubbing compound is basically liquid sandpaper. As you apply it to a clear coat, it starts to break down and become smaller and smaller gridded, kind of wet sanding the part even higher than what you can do with just normal wet sandpaper. Now, I didn't really go over wet sanding in between paint coats because it's not something I typically do. If you spend enough time in the primer stage back and forth, you're eventually going to get a nice primed piece that, in my opinion, you don't need to wet sand, and you can go directly into your base coats or your metallics. This helmet hasn't been wet sanded. This was just the straight Motip primer right off the bat after I was sanding it down to something roughly about 200 grit sandpaper, and these are the results. But there's just so much information out about wet sanding. I will talk more about it in my clear coating video. That's gonna be a whole separate video. Just, you know, the intro to painting. I have the sanding and the painting one, and then the clear coat one will be coming out soon. After that, you can polish it. It does make a little bit of a difference, but you know, the typical eye might not notice it, so don't really worry about that. And then this is just solid car wax. These helmets are both waxed. I just put a lot more effort into this one than this one because this was damaged and I didn't want it to have that level of clarity. I also rushed this one a little bit, sue me. My entire suit over there has a nice layer of wax on it and it keeps it pretty shiny. It's probably due for another coat sometime soon, but it definitely helps keep it cleaner and I think it looks pretty good. You typically can't do this unless you clear coat the part. The more clear coat you build up, the better. But if you start trying to use rubbing compound on something like direct paint, it is gonna start to strip the paint off and you'll be able to tell this is happening by the rag you're using. It'll start turning red or silver or whatever color you're using. So just be mindful of that, but it can really, really amplify your results and take it to a whole other level. I really love this Red Hood helmet, even though you guys are probably Star Wars fans. And before we wrap it up, I wanna show you guys this thing, the Iron Mandalorian helmet. I've been kind of keeping this a secret for a little bit and it's been really hard to not post anything about it. There's a lot of posts and stuff going around lately about custom Mandalorian armors and custom helmets and custom paint jobs, so I had to hop on the train and obviously it was gonna be an Iron Man helmet. This helmet was painted with this Rust-Oleum metallic finish. I did the entire helmet just in one coat with it to kind of get that metallic base coat because this metallic red, which I've tested on this metallic chrome and this metallic gold really do pop when handled with a base chrome. And when I decided to go through and weather it, kind of scuffing up the edges and messing up the sides and scratching it, it revealed the chrome below it, which I think made it look that much better and really bleed through. If there's one thing I've noticed in the Star Wars movies between Boba and Bo-Katan and all of their armors, Beskar doesn't seem to take to paint too well. It seems to scratch and wear off pretty easily, and obviously they're warriors and fighting and combat and all that fun stuff. So I figured, you know, Iron Man suits are never perfectly clean, so why would an Iron Mandalorian helmet? So I'm pretty happy with it. It looks pretty cool, and I have some other plans for this thing, so yeah, keep an eye out for that. The visor was done with a mirror chrome tint. I believe I showed this on the visor video. If I didn't, it's the same method. I just got some window tint. It's a mirror chrome and I did the visor the exact same way. If you guys want to know how to do the visors, I have a video on that and you can see that I can see right through it just perfectly. I can actually see through this chrome tint better than the tint that's on my normal Mandalorian visors. So that's pretty neat. Hi. I do have a little bit of a plan, about like 15% of a plan to go through, redo this helmet, or at least update it to these more candy metallic colors. Because I think if this helmet looked like this helmet, oh boy, it'll look awesome. So yeah, that's my Iron Mando helmet. So that kind of does it for this video, guys. The over-glaring point of this video was to explain to you guys that there's no one proper way to do this. Again, I know some of you probably came here hoping for a perfect step-by-step guide, but if you've been across my channel, you know that's just not how I like doing things. I like to give you guys as much information that I've learned and let you go off into the world to try to make your own mistakes, because you're gonna make mistakes with this. And if I try to paint any other picture besides that, I'm only setting you guys up for failure, and I don't want to do that. There's a lot of information here. There was even stuff I just didn't have time to talk about because this video would take so much longer. I filmed so much footage for this, but a lot of it, it's the same, talking about the same points and the same thing. So I really hope that I was able to kind of convey that message to you, that you need to get out there and start testing your own paints out, testing out your own methods, practice, practice, practice. There is no one perfect way for this. But again, you don't need expensive Alumoluster paint or airbrushes or professional spray systems to get results that honestly still look pretty good on camera. I'm very happy with this. This is actually the helmet that I'm gonna be keeping myself. Yes, I'm probably gonna go and fix some things up, but the rest of them might be part of a giveaway. They might be going to some other things, so just, you know, keep an eye out for that. And then making my own custom Iron Man DeLorean helmet was still pretty fun. If a lot of questions continue to arise and you guys just feel like this video didn't quite cover something as specific as you wanted, leave some comments down below. Maybe I can make a follow-up third or fourth video, I guess in this instance, talking about things that just weren't covered here. And let me know your guys' experience. Leave comments down below of paints that you know work with a clear coat, other methods, other graphite rubs. This way, while people search through the comments, they can see other methods that people are doing. Let's share the wealth and, you know, make this a much bigger video than just what I'm showing here. Again, don't forget, I have other videos for sanding, for painting, for priming, all of that. That's why I didn't show too much of it in this video. I have stuff covering that, but I definitely wanted to show you guys some of the paints and some of the issues I ran into. If you haven't already, if you guys could subscribe, I have more videos like this coming out all the time. I have so many projects in work. If you saw the last little vlog update video that I did, I have over 30 projects in work. Not Star Wars, not Iron Man and Marvel, not just DC. A lot of cool things coming up and some stuff I haven't even told you guys about yet. And if you guys want more clarification about 3D printing, about cosplay, if you're new, old to it, whatever, please go check out the Discord. There's a link for that down below. And I promise you, it's just an absolute wealth of knowledge. We're close to 2,500 members and we're pretty active. If you have an answer, if you have a problem, if you need help, somebody's pretty much always active there who can give you some assistance. So please go check that out. It's free. Why not? This was a rather tricky video to do. I appreciate you guys being so patient with me, and I really do hope it lived up to your expectations. That really does it for this, though. Thank you so much for watching, and you guys have a good day. Oh yeah, I also got my hands on a custom Iron Man NeoPixel lightsaber, but that's for another video. Bye.